Welcome, and thanks for joining us today for our 43rd episode of the Restaurant Dealmaker Show, where we discuss pertinent topics regarding the food and beverage industry with industry professionals. I'm excited to have Kevin Weinberg as my co-host today. Kevin, who likes to be known as Chef Kevin Weinberg, began his restaurant career as a teenager in Walnut Creek, Orinda, and Lafayette. After a trip to Europe at age 20, he moved to the Virgin Islands, working in restaurants, resorts, and aboard private and charter yachts. Boy, that's an exciting background. To deepen his culinary skills, Kevin attended the California Culinary Academy, where he met his future business partner, Ellen McCarty. After graduating in 1983, they launched a catering company. While Ellen ran the business, Kevin took positions in San Francisco, St. Thomas, Spain, and Napa Valley, where he worked under mentor Albert Tordjman at Auberge du Soleil. Kevin then studied Asian cuisine in Hong Kong, Bangkok, and Singapore, continuing through Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. A short visit to Sydney turned into a 6-year stay where he became executive chef for a restaurant group and opened 9 restaurants, including the acclaimed Arizona Bar and Grill. At one point, Kevin managed 6 kitchens simultaneously. Wow, that's quite a skill. In 1994, Kevin resumed his travels through New Zealand, Nepal, and Vietnam before returning to Sydney to open one final concept, the Caribbean Hideaway. In 1996, Kevin returned to Walnut Creek to pursue a longtime dream, opening a seafood restaurant with Ellen. Walnut Creek Yacht Club opened in May 1997 to critical acclaim and quickly became a Bay Area favorite. A 2008 remodel added a full oyster bar and heated outdoor patio called the Aft Deck. Kevin was named the best chef in the Best of Diablo from 2005 to 2007 and in Walnut Creek Magazine in 2012. Under his leadership, Walnut Creek Yacht Club earned top honors in Diablo magazine, including Best Seafood Restaurant, 25 plus years, Best Bartender, 10 times, Best Martini, Best Oysters, Best Sommelier, and Best Place for a Girls' Night Out. Wow. That's about all the best you could ask for. It was also recognized by the San Francisco Chronicle, Open Table, Yelp, the Michelin Guide from 2010 to 2014, and earned the Wine Spectator Award from 2007 to 2025 for Ellen's Wine List. In 2025, after 28 years, Kevin and Ellen made the difficult decision to retire and close Walnut Yacht Club. The news was met with an outpouring of support, media coverage, and emotional visits from loyal guests. Over 6 weeks, stories and celebrations filled the space one last time. On May 7th this year, 28 years to the day from its opening, the restaurant hosted a final night of food, drink, and Walnut Creek Yacht Club hospitality. Surrounded by family, friends, and former staff, Kevin and Ellen quietly closed the doors for the last time. Kevin, thanks very much for joining us today, and it's been a pleasure working with you and Ellen the past months in marketing your business and building, which recently sold. Congratulations, and I'm sure audience is looking forward to learning more about you. I wanted to start by asking you, how did you come up with the name Walnut Creek Yacht Club? Because as most of you know that are familiar with Walnut Creek, there's not any serious water around the area for many, many miles. And it's a very intriguing name and obviously contributed to the success. And so I'd be sort of curious how you decided on coming up with that name.
Hi, Steve. Well, thanks for having me on. And the name kind of came about when we narrowed down the idea that we were going to go with seafood, with a seafood concept. My brother-in-law was the owner of Osprey Seafood, a high-end seafood supplier in San Francisco. So we kind of knew we were going to go that direction. And it was sitting around going, okay, we want to be the Walnut Creek Fish House, it's charter bar, the WC Oyster Place. And I had experience with sailing in the Caribbean and hanging around yacht clubs. And the idea that we wanted was a place that people could come to for all of their occasions. It would be like their place, like their club, like a yacht club. And we just kind of went, hey, Walnut Creek Yacht Club. And that gave us our burgee. That gave us our motif, our interior design. Really, once we went, wow, let's go with Walnut Creek Yacht Club, that sort of put all the rest of the wheels in motion. And over the years, we've had, even in the beginning, people were like, "Oh, I don't want to go there. You have to be a member." And we had a food reviewer even say, "Oh, I didn't know it was a real restaurant." And we would tell people, "Yeah, well, we're going to put a marina in, but the city won't give us the permit." And in the end, there's a famous dairy in this area called Berkeley Farms, and we would tell people, "Well, there's no farms in Berkeley." So we stuck with the yacht club, and it really turned out to be exactly the right move for us.
Yeah, it certainly was. Um, then I know that during the marketing process, when we were, selling your business and the building, you were very adamant that the name, the brand, the menu would not go with the sale. And tell the audience, what was your rationale for that?
Well, when it came down to us, ultimately making that decision, my partner, Ellen, and I, this was one of those things that we had put our blood, sweat, and tears into, and really built it to what it was, being known for its food and hospitality and wine. And changing, long-time brands, especially independent ones, if they're family and they transfer within a family, a multi-generational operation, they tend to have a good chance for success. But in just new ownership, under new management, even if you don't change a single thing, it's the same bread, it's the same server, it's the same busser, it's the same, everything stays the same. People's perception is that it's different. And the market is very finicky right now. And you can't afford to lose any of your sort of clientele base that takes a hit to your bottom line. So it makes it difficult with the perception for a new team to continue forward and be as successful as we were. On top of that, we didn't want to have the brand to be damaged in any way where, oh, they have to change the recipe for the chowder, or they don't do the oysters, or they change the cocktail list, or they don't have the wine list the same. And we wanted people to be able to drive by that spot and look at the building and go, "Oh, remember when that yacht club was there?" And we did everything. We had all our anniversary, all of our parties. Not, "Oh, remember when it was good?" And sort of tarnish what we had built. We have a legacy there, and we were proud of it. So we ultimately decided that no, the brand and all that comes with it wasn't going to be for sale. It was going to be the space for somebody else to try their sort of dream in. We have all of everything it takes to set one up. We wouldn't rule out talking with somebody that wanted to, not like a franchise, but develop the concept. It would work in a lot of different markets. It certainly worked in ours.
Okay, that's great. Towards the end of the interview, I'm going to give you a chance to give your contact information. So if somebody is so motivated to do that, they know how to get in touch with you. Now, when I started selling restaurants, I worked for a company that was in Pleasant Hill, which is very close to Walnut Creek. And I know I started prospecting a little bit in Walnut Creek in 1996. And I go to Walnut Creek regularly now because my son and his family live there. And I've noticed just a tremendous change in Walnut Creek. Give me your perception of what was Walnut Creek like when you opened versus what is Walnut Creek like today?
Well, it's changed. I'd say radically in that period of time. Back in in the early '80s, there wasn't a big whole dining scene going on. I mean, the California restaurant business hadn't really born yet. It wasn't until the '80s when that sort of started here. Spectrum's restaurants opened a place called Spiadini in about 95 or 4. from San Francisco. They were the first people to kind of look at this as a up and coming market, the BART station. They opened right near the BART station. They were a little bit ahead of their time, and it didn't take for the long term. But around 94, I was in Australia. Ellen was still here. She had her sort of finger on the market and was saying, Walnut Creek is ready now. And at that time, Bradley Ogden and they were getting ready to open Lark Creek Cafe down the street from us. They opened, I believe, in 96. So that was the first sign that, yeah, there's going to be some activity happening. It's going to be a good place for a restaurant. So that I came back and we canvassed the area looking for spaces, trying to find where it would be right. We were looking at restaurants and keeping tabs on who was doing how much business on what days to try to figure out who might be going out of business and see what would become available. And then this spot opened and we went for it. That was we signed the lease in 96. And then we started construction in February of 97 and we moved in May. It's pretty quick. Scott's opened, I'm going to say they were probably back in the late 80s and maybe probably late 80s. They were here for a little while. I wasn't living in the area back then, so I don't remember. I don't think they were here in 83. But it may have been. I'd have to look that up. But they'd been there for a while, and they closed during the COVID. They still have the Scott's in Oakland. But different kind of seafood restaurant. They were open when we opened. They had a much older clientele that had been going there for many years. We were gonna go after a very wide market. We knew that as following our sort of yacht club idea that we wanted our market to be wide, from young people on dates to older people, celebrating, the 50th anniversary. And it wasn't uncommon to see an older couple sitting next to a younger couple, or somebody in shorts sitting next to somebody in a suit and tie. We covered all the bases.
Yeah. No, you were definitely an institution. I know my daughter-in-law, who was raised in Lafayette, her family used to go to your restaurant all the time, as a regular family event. And then talking to other people during the marketing process, I would hear the same story. When I was young, my parents would take me regularly to the Walnut Creek Yacht Club. And so, I mean, you had a tremendous amount of regulars, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. And that was the club thing. I mean, it really fit to people. On top of the armchair sailors, and the San Francisco Bay is a sailing area. My best friend, I had a connection, and he was an America's Cup racer and Olympic medalist. And we had a lot of really great memorabilia all over the place. We used the teak and holly motif. We had our own burgee. We had a big burgee collection. And in the early years, I started to take Polaroid pictures. This was before, iPhones. I would take Polaroid pictures of young kids with their parents having their first oyster. And we started this junior oyster eater club, and they would get a card in the mail that they could come back for a dessert. And we'd take their Polaroid, they'd write their name and age. And I had hundreds of them, and we framed them and put them up in the hallway where they could come now, and especially during the closing. I had all kinds of kids that came to see their picture and brought their kids to show them. They were 8 when they had that picture taken, and now they were there with their young kids. And I did a lot of cooking classes for kids in the summertime, and those kids have all grown up now and come, as adults and with young families. The numbers of anniversaries and people that I was talking to during the closing period that said, oh, we came here on our first date, and we came here on our first anniversary, and we've come to every anniversary for 19 years. It was pretty spectacular, the kind of response we had with people. And it was, I mean, in this business, you don't always get that. And we had so many people that got it, and we were able to be their place for celebration or just a place to go get something to eat. I don't want a whole big fancy thing. I'm going to go get my swordfish, my fries, my salad, and go home. A
Yeah.
glass of
Got
wine.
it.
So we
Yeah.
covered it all.
Yeah, for sure. So what, from your perspective, what are the major factors and challenges that have changed in the industry since you opened the yacht club to the day that you closed the yacht club? What have been the
Well,
major?
it's a big span of time, and there's been a lot of changes in regulation and costs and employee relationships. All of those things. Um, uh, you know, the margins. It's just become. I mean, California maybe in particularly, but I think also nationally, tech has become a huge component. Before, when POS was just starting out and there wasn't Excel spreadsheets to do inventory with. I mean, things were a lot different. So as tech grew, that changed everything. And then, there were websites. That was never a thing. Nobody had websites when, we started out. And um, you had to keep up with all of that. You had to get a website going. You had to keep your POS. You had to determine how much data did you want and how much data could you use. And you could get buried in the data that POS systems could give you today. Credit card processing, um, you know, the all the regulations involved with employees. It just kept changing as we kept growing. The bottom line, though, for us being an independent was hospitality, and we wanted to stay focused on that. We wanted to provide, you know, excellent hospitality, and there's a difference between hospitality and service. On top of the food, our food had to be really good. I was the chef and I was passionate about food. Um, my travels led us to be we called it sort of a global cuisine. There would be dishes on the menu from Thailand next to a gumbo, a variety of different kinds of sauces. So there was a lot of influence from around the world, which gave people variety, which people want. You know, controlling your costs as things. I found old menus as we were doing the closing and looking back at some of the pricing when we opened to what we charge today. I was like, wow, that's what we were charging. How do we even make it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like when we had Zims, we had starting out, I think the hamburger was like $2 or $3, which was above and beyond anybody at that time because we had a real high quality product. And nowadays, it's not unusual to pay $20 plus, right, to
I
get a
don't
hamburger. It's
know.
just for a regular hamburger, run of the mill hamburger, unless you go to fast food, and even their
Yeah,
prices.
we fought hard to try to keep our pricing in line over, especially probably I would say the last 8-10 years. It was more rapid, and we didn't want to be one of those places. We were perceived for a lot of people as being costly, but we had a costly product, um, and we wanted to try to make sure there was value there. And we would fight rising prices wherever we could, right up to the very end. I mean, I made some calculated price increases in the last year. And a lot of our guests were like, "Oh, you got to raise your prices. I went to this place down the road. They were $50, and we just didn't want to be that expensive." But as it got closer and closer, you have to be real. You got to look at your numbers, and if you got to charge more, you got to charge more, or you're not going to be in business.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Kevin? What was your favorite part about the hospitality business?
I mean, the
What
fact
gave
that
you
we
the
were
most?
playing
Gave you the
off of
most
the. Say it again.
what gave you the most nachas? Happiness.
Yeah. Um, I mean, in the end, just making people happy, making people come in and they have a good time. they have great food. They come back to get something that they've had before, and it's just as good as it was the last time. They bring friends because they've said, "Oh, this was our place," and then their friends love it, and then they bring friends, and talking to people. In the beginning, I was in the kitchen, and Ellen was in the dining room, and her personality and charm and touch with our guests in creating that space in the dining room was instrumental. I had to back it up with good food, and then we did it with our staff being well trained and explaining to them how we want to talk to people and treat people. Those things were really important, and that also made a difference. It made people come back the next time. And if you get one person in the door, that's the customer you need to market to.
Sure.
And if you get them won over and they come back, you're on the right road. And then you get them to tell their friends, and then they come back. And I would come to tables, and we would, Ellen would come in the kitchen. Can you make a little something for these people? They're here for this or they're here for that. And then I would whip something up and we would send it out. Or can you come out and
Right.
talk to them? And we did a lot of that. And then we started theme meals. One of the things we started to recover from the '08 collapse was we called it the last Wednesday dinner, family dinner. And we started the last Wednesday of every month, and we did a themed menu. I would do Mardi Gras, and it would be all New Orleans, or it would be Spain, and I would cook paella. We did Oktoberfest, and we'd make pretzels, and the whole thing. But it was sit together, communal seating, serve family style. I really enjoyed doing that. And over the years, we had people that would sign up. We'd do 10 a year, and they'd come to every one, and they'd come every year. And the Oktoberfest one grew so big that we had to move it inside. And then it got so big inside that we said we can't do it that anymore. We had to tone it back down to so those meals were usually for around 35 people. And we had all kinds of great themed dinners. We did one for the farewell tour of the Grateful Dead. I was a big Dead fan, and we did a Grateful Dead dinner, and had all kinds of people that I didn't know were Deadheads show up for that. So yeah, those were really fun. Crab events we did that were a blast. We do them every year when the crab season opened. We had a seafood market, so at Christmas Eve time, Thanksgiving time, we would sell tons of crab. Working with Mike and Osprey, we would be getting fresh local crab right off the boats, and people grew to love it, and they would come every year to pick up their crab for the holidays. And then we would have a crab feed dinner that we'd serve communal style. We did a lobster event that blew up, also starting in the '08s, to get people in. We started actually way before that. We started 1999, I think, is when we did the first one for a lobster dinner. And then we raised the price a penny every year. And we did that until 2017. And 2018, we realized, plus it gotten so busy, and the prices had gone up, we can't charge that anymore. We're barely even making this event work. But the volume had grown. We had a sign that my dad had made me in the office that in 2011, we did 2011 lobster dinners that year, and that was huge. In 2017, we did over 7,000.
Wow.
So we had to change the booking. We had to have an online booking system. You could only make 2 reservations. We'd open the books for reservations on the, we used to do it at midnight, and then one time it didn't go through and the phone was ringing off the hook on midnight. I had to run to the restaurant and open the computer to get the reservations going. So the next year we switched it to noon, which made more sense. But we would take 3,000 reservations in 24 hours for that month. So, and then people would come every year. It was the thing, people would come, some people only came in lobster month, but many people would come, every year, 2 or 3 times in lobster month, and then they'd be regulars the rest of the year. So we did a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
Our cocktail program was huge. We had a really, a bar that was set up for, meeting people. And, we had people that met at our bar and got married. Our bartender back in those days, who's now a big, he's the global ambassador for Castadores Tequila. but spent his early career with us. He was good with. He's really busy, and he'd be like talking to people and go, "Hey, have you met them?" And then he'd introduce the people so he could get back to work. And so people loved the bar. So yeah, all of that together brought us a lot of happiness. I mean, it was, we'd look at a full dining room and you would hear people, people complain. We had complaints, and we would deal with them, in the best manner that we could, make sure we were making people happy so that when they left, they would be like, "Where do you want to go?" "Well, let's just go back to the yacht club." And that's what happened.
That's cool. So, there obviously been, several events during your career that have been challenging. And what were the most challenging events during your career, and how did you deal with those challenges?
Well, again, the first was, I'd say, opening day.
Yes.
You go through all the planning and all the number crunching, and you've got everything lined up, and you have a home run, and you really don't know anything until you open the door. I remember my dad telling me, well, there comes a time you gotta stop the planning and manufacture the product. Get out and do it. And so we did the opening day, and all of a sudden we were like, okay, well, we better charge people and let's hope that this works. And then, we got off going good. We got a review a few months later, and then we got, all right, we'll take it from there. And we kept growing and building. And I guess the first real chapter was, 9/11, when that happened, because the air traffic was shut down. So for a short period of time, well, not a little more than a week or more, there was very difficult to get seafood. Mike was could only get what could come in by truck on the West Coast. So East Coast supply, European supply, all that was shut down. Clams from the Massachusetts, scallops, all those kinds of things, fresh prawns from the Gulf. None of that was available. So all of a sudden we had a very limited amount of product to work with. And then there was this, like, what are people going to do? We immediately that day knew we were going to stay open. I mean, Ellen said, we're a place where people want to meet and gather and talk, and we need to be open for that. And that's exactly what happened. We told our employees, hey, if you want to go home, if you need to be home for however long it takes, do whatever you need to do, but we're going to be open and we're going to be here. And right away, our bar filled up and people were coming for days after to gather and talk about it. And so after that, air traffic opened up, and we sort of got back in business, and we kept moving along and growing. We started to look at opening more places. We wanted to do the concept. We were looking in Vallejo and Napa. We had interested people wanting us to get into Livermore. So we started to do that. And the space next to us, that was a pizza restaurant the whole time. So this would have been 2007. We were going to be able to get that as the lease from our landlord and take over the space and expand. So we thought, all right, that's going to be a better idea. And we passed on a lease in Livermore and said, let's do the expansion. So we started to look into that. And that was, the banks were giving away money. And 2007, oh yeah, okay. So we're going to remodel the whole place. We're going to, do everything that we wanted to do. We took a massive investment loan and did it, and started the construction. We closed on New Year's Eve, 07, 08. They finished the construction on the other side, knocked down the wall to join the two places, and we opened in 14 days. And then the economy collapsed. So we got 25, 30% bigger. And by April, May of that year, we'd lost 25, 30% of our business. The hard part about that was it wasn't because it was something that we did. We didn't screw up. We didn't have bad food or hospitality or so, none of it. And so it was challenging when you had no control over what was happening. And
Sure.
we just buckled down and cut where we could, but we didn't want to make sacrifices, not have enough staff or buy cheaper food. We just did the best that we could to keep doing and, staying true to our goal. And we started we started the actual membership of the yacht club with membership cards and a loyalty program and an email-based newsletter called the Scuttlebutt that Ellen put together that turned out to be a great thing. We'd put pictures and deals and plans and, the party marketing and all that was there. And we just kept doing that, making sure people were having a good time. And we started to see it by 2010, things were letting up. 2011, from 2011 to 2018, I think we had double-digit growth every year. And, that led on to the opportunity for us to be able to buy the real estate, which we did that, which also made a big difference for our future. And then COVID, which was one of the bigger challenges. Not anybody in the restaurant business, in this country in the world had to deal with it, and everybody was dealing with it differently. I had a chef restaurateur from a nearby restaurant come over on the second day. I was like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna whatever it takes, man. I got everything on the line here. I can't just close up." They in turn did. They just said, "No, we're done. We close up." And they were a long established restaurant. And we just, we went from 50 to 4 in staff. And then we switched Ellen's work to being remote so she could do, whatever she needed to do, keep in touch with our customers through our newsletter and the marketing remotely. And then I had 3 people with me. We were not a to-go restaurant. We didn't even have very many to-go containers. Our food is not to-go food. Fish and chips, steams, calamari. That wasn't our thing. And we quickly had to figure out how to do that. We started a menu trying to move off product that we had, but we knew there was just no way. We didn't have a infrastructure for ordering or any of that. There was just no way we were going to move this product. We ended up giving away most of our food in bags that we put together as our staff came to get their last paychecks. We put apples, oranges, tortillas, eggs, whatever we had. And then it just came to me the next morning. I'm with my guys and I'm like, all right, soup. I love soup. I think soup is incredibly versatile, cultural, tasty, tell a story thing. We were known for our soup program. I said, we're going to make soup out of everything. And we just started making all kinds of soup, putting it in quart containers and freezing it. And we put an order system together, got it up on our website, and our guests loved it who wanted to support us. Started coming down and buying soup, and we're selling soup out the back door. And then ABC News came and did a story about it. There I am with a mask on, and I'm handing soup to put into people's cars in the back of there. We had, at one time, I think we had probably 15 different kinds of soups on the menu, frozen, and you could buy 4 or 5 of them, put them in your freezer, and we had our clam chowder, we had our pepper pot, the 2 things that we were known for. And after the news story and then our own marketing blew up, I remember one day I was like, oh my God, we can make it just doing soup, just selling soup. I remember the sales. I don't remember what the number was, but it was a lot for what we'd been doing. And I was like, but I knew, it was going to wear off.
Sure.
So we kept the soup going. We pivoted into what we called What's for Dinner. And we would do package. And a lot of restaurants were doing similar type of things at that time. So we went with that, where we had meals that were for 4 people, and you could add dollars per person to go up to however many people. And it was, a main course, sides, dessert, appetizer, or salad type thing. And we gave those a bunch of different themes. And we really loved doing that. And my sous chef, that was fun. It was not our normal menu food. And that was relatively successful for us. Meanwhile, we're building our to-go. I'm getting to-go containers in. We're getting them. We got, Chow Now on our platform so people could order online. and got a menu that we could function with just 3 guys and one person, my assistant, Yesenia, answering the phone. And then that grew till where I had to get somebody else to help answer the phone. And then that grew even more where I had to get a couple more cooks. And by June, we closed down in April, May. Yeah, probably in the beginning of June, I was able to start to bring back some of my kitchen crew so we could just keep up with the to-go order. And so when they gave the order for outdoor dining, which we had an outdoor patio, I had already planned on turning our parking lot into a dining area also. We were immediately able to start serving. I had enough kitchen staff so I could start that day. And the first day was really just buy the to-go food and you could take it out the patio and eat it. But people loved that because they were not at home. They were at a restaurant. And then we, had to get servers in. Serving staff, front of the house was a little more difficult, but we got some of our loyal staff that have been with us for years to come back. And yeah, we had a outdoor dining program going pretty quickly. And then, at this point, nobody knew what PPP was. I mean, we were all flying blind during those initial months trying to figure out how, and many restaurants in our market and the state and the country didn't make it through COVID. It was, and it changed everything. It changed third party ordering. It changed to go program. It created ghost kitchens. All of that tech, all of that, even since that, when things got so much normalized, maybe by 2022, if you can call that normalized, we kept our to-go program going. It wasn't huge, but people were still ordering to go. Many people after the COVID, in the market decided, oh heck, I can get a restaurant meal delivered. I'm just going to do that. It's easier for me. And there were so many ways to do it. So now, yeah, takeaway or to-go food and an ordering platform, that's crucial to success in most every business until you get into the higher upper end stuff. But even those places had to do it. So we did that to get through COVID, and we did.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So that explanation's a good segue to my next question, which is, the hospitality industry in California has become very, very challenging because of, shortage of employees, the high cost of living in California and the high operating costs, high product costs, high occupancy costs, all these challenges. How do you see the industry going in the future in California as a result of all these, super challenges?
A lot of challenges were created by COVID, and a lot came later through it. The supply chain collapse, the labor situation going up and down, being not able to get people, wages having to go up, undocumented working, all of that, pricing especially continuing to rise. Inflation came in. So really, I mean, what are we, late 2025, 2021, we were just restaurants were just sort of finding out, did they make it through COVID? And how did they change, and will they be able to keep going, or how much longer can they keep going? Did their model change completely? I know a lot of places, in certain markets were able to, I don't even need to have a dining room anymore. I'm just going to continue to go. And a lot of restaurants during COVID that were already set up for it, barbecue, Mexican, Chinese, those kind of places, they boomed during that period. But for us, that wasn't us. And we needed to get back to hospitality and quality food and the experience, and fight these challenges as they came. And they were difficult, and they still are today. Getting good staff, during that period of COVID, my sous chef was a great guy, had been with me for a while, was one of those people in that change of career that was like, hey, chef, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I don't think I want to be a chef. I want to be home on the weekends with my kids, and I was like, I can't, it's not like I could say, here's more money, and people were concerned with quality of life was now a big issue in the restaurant industry, where it had been kind of suppressed. You had to work hard, you had to work a lot of hours, especially in the back of the house. So finding a replacement was difficult, extremely difficult, and to the point where by the time we ended, I never did. I had a lot of, people help me along the way, and we tried different people, but it didn't happen. So I see the future of the independent restaurant in California, in our sort of price point and drive for quality and hospitality. That type of restaurant, I think, is going to be fewer and fewer as we move forward. I think they're going to become either multi-units. The people are going to open another concept or replicate their concept, because you need the buying power as you grow. You need the ability to HR is a massive project to deal with. So groups that have maybe 3 or 4 different concepts, and then they might have 2 or 3 each, and those concepts can come together. Now you have buying power, you have a legal team, you have accounting team, you have a payroll team, you have an HR team, you have, senior management. And so your costs can be controlled much more, and you can keep your eye on those a lot better than operating as an independent. I mean, as it goes with independence, if you're an independent and you do your inventory once a month, and you do a really good inventory, and you do all you're doing, all keeping your books, and you're just doing it once a month, that's pretty good for an independent, because a lot of them don't even do that. You don't have time. Now, in a corporate environment, no, that's every Saturday night. You're doing full inventory because you're keeping track of the numbers. The independent, it's very difficult. Unless you're an independent where your sales are, $20 million, and it's a different story. But, if you're not, it's hard to pay attention to what money you're leaving on the table when you're just trying to get through dinner service. So I see that, and I see tech. You see it right now. Most places you start going to, handheld units. Everybody, or even higher end restaurants, ordering's being done right at the table. The kitchen management screens where the food orders are going straight to the stations in the kitchen. And that's happening in lots more restaurants. We would probably, if we were staying on, we would probably be looking at doing that. And subscription models for these things are costly. Credit card processing, another huge burden to the independent that America doesn't seem to get a handle on, how much we pay for credit card processing fees.
Yeah, no, very good, thorough explanation. And I think the buyer of your restaurant sort of exemplifies what you said. I mean, they have several restaurants, several concepts, so there are economies of scales for them and the HR department and purchasing and, getting good people, et cetera. They have that infrastructure. So I think they certainly exemplify what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a premium location, and we had turned it into a sort of a legacy spot for Walnut Creek. It's a very big visibility on 2 corners in a restaurant row area. Being in business there for nearly 30 years, everybody knew where the yacht club was. We had a lot of interest from a lot of people working with you, and from different types of places, from sale, lease, different concepts. When we felt a little bit responsible as to what was going to go into that space for the community and for our guests that we'd had so long. So maybe another great restaurant can come in that they can go with. And the company that we went with, they own the restaurant across the street from us. And they were there when they were young. It used to be Hubcap's Diner, kind of a burger and ice cream joint. And Mike was running with his dad when we opened, and they grew that and turned that concept into a place called Broderick's now. They have a new concept across the street called Lita. They have one in Lafayette. They have a few other diners. They have, quite a few different concepts and units. But yes, they have the infrastructure of a multi-unit operation to control all the stuff that needs to be controlled that a regular independent can't do. So their chances of success are much greater, in my opinion,
Yeah, I
than
agree.
somebody else coming on along. And we talked to people that were like, "Oh, it's always been my dream, and
Yeah.
I worked in this place, and then this is a great place, and my concept will be great here." And I'm like, "Man, it's going to be so hard for you to do what you want to do." But and the money that it takes now to open a restaurant. I mean, we opened a restaurant, borrowing from whoever we could. We thought, oh yeah, we'll get money, no problem. The concept is great, and we had our little book, and we shopped it out to everybody and family, and people were like, oh, this is great. All right, I'm interested. And then you'd call up with the follow-up call, and they'd be like, you gonna write a check? Yeah. Oh no, I got to do college tuition. And you learn that, oh no, you're not gonna get 1 out of 20 people. And we were, we sold a share for $1,500 right near the end, and then we had $100,000 SBA loan, and the owners carried 47,000, and we put it together. Nowadays, you'd be nuts to do that. There's too much at risk. There's the margin is too small. You really got to go in knowing what the hell you're doing, and have it all accounted for. In my opinion, I don't want to crush anybody's dream, but if you're in that range, and the other thing is sales. If you're in the, you can open a nice little sandwich shop and do $800,000 in sales, or a little cafe of some kind. Maybe you do $1.2 million. But if in the state of California, an independent average margin right now is like 4%. So what's 4% of 1.4 million? And if you have a partner or an investor, there you go. It's difficult. And then you get into the $2 to $5 million range. Okay, now you've got revenue, but it's flying out the door if you don't keep track of it, and that's hard to do. So multi-unit corporations that take on independents, I think you'll see a lot more of that.
Sure. Okay. Well said. Yeah, we deal with many restaurants that do multi-million dollars in sales, $3, $4, $5 million, and a lot of them are losing money even at that high volume. Because their initial costs are so high, they're amortizing big debt. Plus their operating costs are high because they have huge plants. And so high volume doesn't necessarily equate to necessarily a profitable operation.
No, it doesn't. Bringing in a lot of money does not mean you're making a lot of money. That's a big conception.
We
saw our margin drop, and we saw it drop from all those things we were just talking about. Operating costs were up, power costs more, gas costs more, food costs more, water costs more. And, if you don't raise your pricing, labor, if you don't keep up with that and you try to run on your old numbers, you won't make it. And then all of a sudden you're looking at your margin, and then you're working 80 hours a week and you made 1%. And then you have to start asking yourself, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So the restaurant business is complicated.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So my last question to you is, you've obviously had many accomplishments throughout your career. And what single accomplishment is most meaningful to you?
Oh, wow. Well, that's like, what's your favorite child? There were a lot of milestones that we had along the way. Getting the very first restaurant review in the newspaper, in the local paper, came out, and we're A+, and that was fantastic. So that, and then shortly thereafter that, we had a Michael Bauer review from the San Francisco Chronicle, one of the first reviews that he had written out this side of the Caldecott Tunnel. I remember we got 2 stars. It wasn't out of the world, but it was good, and it was Michael Bauer, and so that was huge.
Yes. He made or break people, Michael Bauer.
Oh yeah, especially in that was 97. So California restaurants.
I put McCormick and Schmick in a location in Corte Madera, and they got a lousy review from Michael Bauer. And 3 months later, they called me and said, "You're selling this place."
Yeah.
So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
So we were thrilled with that. we started to get a lot of recognition locally, the Diablo magazine and the newspapers and articles and things like that. And we started this collection of bests with Diablo magazine, which is the big market and big, a coffee table magazine for the East Bay. And I mean, I think by the time we closed, even we got best seafood in the last issue and we were already closed. But I think we must have gotten, we had a big poster in the window keeping it going every year, 30 plus bests of all different categories, but best seafood every year. So all of those, even though they're sort of marketing things, they were important. We had an upstairs wall just covered with accolades. So those accolades were great. 2010, when Zagat was happening and stuff, we were, we hadn't been listed in Zagat, and I was like, what are we going to do to get a, review in Zagat? And the next day in the mail, we got a Michelin recommendation. So the Michelin Guide at that point, it was 2010, they were doing recommendations. They don't do it anymore now. They do the Bib Gourmand, the $40 dinner kind of thing, instead of the recommendations. But for me as a chef, I was like, wow, that was awesome. So 2010, 11, 12, I think maybe four, we got four, then they stopped doing it. So that was, that was an award moment that I kind of look back on. I think also our staff, we had staff, one young gentleman, he became my kitchen manager, fish cutter, pastry chef, started with me the day we opened, and he was there the day we closed. My office operations manager, she started with me as a host and hated it 15 years ago. And I moved her into expediting and running food with me, and then later into the office, and she totally excelled at that. And I was like, oh, great, this is perfect. Now I can start delegating responsibilities that were clogging me up to her, still with me to the day we closed. One of the people that stayed with me through COVID. We had servers and bartenders that were 10, 12, 14, 15, bussers that were 15 years. That kind of loyalty, I mean, it made it really difficult when I had to tell these people that we were closing.
Sure.
But it was one of the things, I mean, I feel it now, even just talking about it, that as a restaurateur and operator, Ellen and I both, it was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the end, but the loyalty that we had from key staff over the years was fantastic. And then we back that up with this loyalty from guests. That in itself, also, hey, not a lot of restaurants go 28 years. There's the old thing they say, and different people debate it, but most restaurants fail in the first two. Half the restaurants fail in the first 2 years, and the other half fail in the next 5.
It's not right.
Somewhere in there is the truth. So you're making it 10 years is great. Making it 20 is unbelievable. Making it 28, and we were going to go for 30, but I figured, look, I'm going to, I want to enjoy some of the fruits of my labor. So we called it at 28. But that's a tremendous reward to both my partner and I, to look back at that and go, wow, we were successful on all levels, and we got out on our terms. We didn't get forced out. We didn't have the landlord raise the rent. Although a lot of times during COVID, people were saying, oh, I hope your landlord is going to give you a deal on the rent. And I was like, oh, no. She said she wants the rent on the first, because they didn't know we actually owned the property. But we had a mortgage.
Sure.
I had to pay the rent. I wasn't going to get let go of that. So yeah, the whole package is one of the things we look back on and go, well, yeah, that's something we're proud of. We did make a legacy, and it was good to look back at.
For sure.
Getting there was tough. The last months working, with you, and you were witness to it. Having to keep it secret, and then it exploding, and all that was going on. It was a lot, but we're lucky.
It was a pleasure working with you. But anyway, Kevin, I want to thank you very much for sharing your accomplished background, which I believe will serve as a role model and inspiration for future ambitious chef entrepreneurs. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do so? Somebody, as you said, may license your, the Walnut Creek Yacht Club. So
that's definitely something we're interested in. We're also interested in writing a book. We think that a book with recipes, we had requests for so many recipes and things and experiences, the stories that were shared, that we think sort of a combination independent restaurateur memoir, how we got here, and then recipes as the next kind of project. But reaching me, I think the best is to use my email, which is Chef Kevo, CHEF, Chef Kevo, KEVO at AOL.com. And AOL, I got my first email address and I stuck with it. But Chef Kevo, all one word, at AOL.com. You can email me any question, any anything you want to talk about. I'm happy to talk about the restaurant business with people. I think the next stage of my life might be some of that. Younger people, younger chefs. I love mentoring and talking about the business to people. So yeah, feel free to contact me for any of those reasons.
Great. Thank you. I'm sure people,
I think we can put it in the link or in the comments or something later. They know how to do that. That's tech beyond me.
For sure. Well, anyway, I want to wish you best wishes to you and Ellen, your partner, for long life filled with good health, and enjoy your well-deserved retirements. Our future restaurant Dealmaker shows co-hosts are in October, Dan Baker, who is our own restaurant realty agent. He was formerly the chef owner for 21 years of Marche au Fleur, one of the top restaurants in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Dan has an extensive background in restaurant consulting, so he'll have some really good things to say that I think you'll be interested in. In November, Bennett Maxwell, he is the founder of Dirty Dough. It's an unusual name, Dough spelled D-O-U-G-H, which is one of the fastest growing QSR restaurant concepts in the country, with over 80 locations open nationally. And there are supposedly 450 units currently under development nationwide. And they've just recently been acquired by Crave-worthy brands. In December, our restaurant realty staff will be highlighting the events of 2025 and wishing everyone a happy holiday season. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. And Kevin, thank you very much for your words of wisdom. I'm sure you threw a lot of nuggets out there that strike home with me, and I sure will be very beneficial to people that are either in this industry or considering pursuing the industry. If you want to get in touch with me, I can be reached at steve@restaurantrealty.com. And I can also be reached toll free at 888-995-9701. Take care of yourself and take care of others. And again, Kevin, thank you very much for your participation.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you very much.
Enjoy having you.
All right.
Stay well.